Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Ignorant Intellectual on Media. I have way too much stuff on my desk, so I need to do some haul videos. Thought maybe I'd do one huge video, but then I thought, nah, I better break it up. Otherwise, this video is going to be like 3 hours long or something because I ended up finding a whole bunch of stuff. All right, so the first thing I found was a gentleman had advertised on Facebook Marketplace some Criterion Collection films that I didn't have yet. And then it turns out when I went over to his place, he had a whole box full of Criterions that he hadn't even listed yet. So I went through them all, picked out all the ones that I want, and he had some other stuff that wasn't Criterions as well, especially what was the gentleman's name? The Polish director. What was that Polish director's name? I keep forgetting his name. You know, the guy that did the Double Life of Veronique. Yes, Krzysztof Kieślowski. Kieślowski? Kieślowski? If I realize his name, I apologize. Ignorant intellectual. I'll have to find out how to pronounce his name properly. But anyways, he had basically a large amount of Clouzot's filmography, so I picked those up as well. So I thought maybe I'd go through that first, and then we can go. I have other DVDs and Blu-rays as well, and books, and I even found some records, some LPs as well. I'll go through as well. But first, I thought I'd do that uh, private sale haul with the Criterions, and I also found a Criterion from another private sale purchase. So I'll just add that one Criterion because there was one Criterion that was in those that I bought. So I might as well just keep all the Criterions together. So all right. So the first one that I got from the other guy, not the main guy that I bought all the Criterions from, is I got Spartacus on a DVD. And it's number 105. Yeah, number 105 in the collection. All right. So Spartacus, uh, directed by Stanley Kubrick, if you remember, right? So, and it stars what's his name? Uh, it escapes me. You know, the guy from Wall Street, his father, right? That's how I relate. Michael Douglas's father. What was his name? Kirk Douglas. Kirk Douglas's father. He plays Spartacus. Anyways, that so Spartacus is number 105 in the collection. But before I tell you what the movie is about, but basically with the name you probably already know. Um, it just when I found this, because this is what was a movie, one of the first um, uh, Criterions that I watched. So back in the day, back in the 90s. So just a little history on the Criterion. Probably everybody knows how the Criterion Collection started. You know, originally they were all on a laser disc. You know, those big platters that are kind of the size of a 33 record, right? And then you would have to go out and buy a laser disc player, hook it up to your TV, and you're talking about equipment in the thousands of dollars, right? So, uh, and they didn't have any, you know, like LCD or LED televisions back then. I mean, they were just maybe getting into plasma TVs at the time. So if you bought a plasma TV, attached it with a laser disc, you would have a really nice system to watch. And the DVDs from the Criterion Collection were quite beautiful, right? So, but you'd be spending thousands of dollars. What I did was I didn't collect the laser discs. Uh, In fact, they were under the radar at that time. It was all VHS. There was a competition between Beta and Betamax and VHS for the home theater market, right? And VHS won out, but you can still find Beta players and Beta tapes around. But VHS became the dominant form of it. So that's how everybody watched their movies. It wasn't with Laserdisc. I mean, there was a small percentage of people that would get Laserdisc, right? Anyway, so they first started out on Laserdisc, and then they moved to DVD when DVD started to come out. And that's when I started getting into the Criterion Collection because my local library branch had a bunch of them, right? So I would go into the library. I used to go into to borrow books, but then I started working at a bookstore, and I could get books from the bookstore or just sit in the bookstore when I'm working and read any book in the bookstore that I wanted, right? Uh, so, um, so when I went to the library, it was more of finding interesting things to watch because they had a large selection of videos, right? VHS and DVDs, right? So I started watching Criterion Collection films from the library. And one of the first I watched was this one, which is Spartacus. All right, so this is number 105 in the collection. Um, it uh, is a pretty good film, but for nostalgia purposes, I really liked it. I ended up buying it. I paid like $15 for it. So, um, but this is what I remember with the Criterion Collection, and they sometimes hit this hit this benchmark nowadays as well, but not all the time, right? So um, they distinguish themselves because a regular DVD kind of looks like that, right? But they distinguish themselves by having a double. You know, the early Disney films would come out on DVD like this in a double-sided, like a double disc DVD case that holds, you know, two DVDs instead of one, and they made it intentionally thicker, right? So that they would distinguish themselves from it. So these are the early Criterions, and they were good because not only did they come with a really nice edition of the film that you could watch, but also they always had a second disc, all right, the second disc of special features of a whole bunch of different, sometimes a documentary, sometimes criticism on the film, and sometimes even shorter films from the director who directed the film that's on the title, right? Sometimes you'll have the director and then you'll have some of his early short films on the other disc as well. So it's always interesting what Criterion uh, people came up with. And what was the main attraction of it was the book, right? You get a book of criticism, and they're really nice, right? So it was the booklet that kind of pushed them over the top. I mean, the condition of the film obviously was a lot better if you watched the film before the Criterion got a hold of it and then improved it. Um, it was like night and day watching it. Uh, but it was the booklet that was in it, and the care that they took in making them were what made them stand out, right? So I started watching these a lot, and then when I started collecting movies, I was more into books. I had a large library, a book library, and collected baseball cards at some point as well, and some other things, comic books when I was younger. But I got into movies maybe 3 years ago. But back in the '90s, I got into movies more watching them than collecting them, right? So, but once because the price of a DVD was like 30 something dollars back then, right? So it was quite expensive. That was back in the '90s, so that's like 30 years ago, and they were in the $20 and $30 range, right? Some used ones would be in the like $8.99 or $9.99 kind of thing, but uh, most of them were quite expensive, and for a person that was on a low income, it wasn't affordable. So we would just go to Blockbuster or Rogers Video or whatever and rent them and watch them, right? And it was a lot cheaper, right? So anyway, so that's when I started. So these ones I've always had an affinity for. So whenever I see a DVD that's in a case like this and has the two discs in it and a nice booklet, I always thought that was the best that um, the Criterion Collection did, right? So later on, they're switching to Blu-ray and 4K, and the packaging is smaller. Sometimes they'll still have a booklet in it, but sometimes the booklet is like 3 or 4 pages. You know, uh, Other times they will have a nice edition of it in a box set. That's cool, right? Um, but anyways, they kind of moved away from that a bit, or they move in and out of it a lot. Anyway, so I bought like 30 something movies from this guy of Criterion movies. All right, so this was from the other guy though, Spartacus number 105, starring Kirk Douglas. It's a Stanley Kubrick film, and it was what was it, 1960, I think it came out, right? Um, so it's basically about um, ancient Rome and the gladiators and in the in the rings or whatever you call them, fighting it out to the death kind of thing. It's about that, right? It's kind of like a earlier version of Gladiator with Russell Crowe, right? So it's cool. It's one of the first Criterions I ever watched. So that's 105 in the collection. Next up, I'll do Beauty and the Beast, which is a Jean Cocteau film. Basically, the story of Beauty and the Beast. This one is, the Beast has a large. He's a rich man. He has a large amount of property, and the father of Belle, who's the girl in the film, uh, picked a flower off his property, a rose off his property, and was sentenced to death for it. And so then she saves her father's life by going to the Beast and pleading for his life and doing whatever the Beast wanted. Anyways, the Beast was enamored by her, and then there was that conflict, but also attraction and all that going on. Right? Basically, it's like an allegory for so many films are in that genre where you have like a swashbuckling or a bad boy kind of guy in the film who doesn't really care much about other people, just about getting the shit that he wants done. And then he meets a girl, like a virginal girl or an innocent type of girl, beautiful and everything, and she tames him, kind of thing. That's basically Beauty and the Beast is basically that story, just on steroids or whatever. So the Beast is actually a beast, right? So, but it's basically an allegory for dating practices, really. So, all right, so that's Beauty and the Beast by Jean Cocteau. And this is one of the original type of. This was number six, yeah, number six, very early one of it, and the original ones that came out on DVD had that type of Criterion Collection on it. They didn't have the white stripe or that square that goes down here, right? They had it along the spine like that. So they've gone through a few changes. Like here's a newer one that has it. It goes down the spine here and it goes down the spine here, right? These are the older ones. All right, so that's Beauty and the Beast. It was number six. Next up is Ingmar Bergman's Sawdust and Tinsel, and this one is number 412 in the collection. So this probably has a Blu-ray version of it as well. Any of these ones that have that type of square, and then you have the part on the front, and then on the spine it's like wrapped around. Um, Most of those have Blu-ray editions as well as DVD editions. So this one came out in 1953, and this is about what is it? It's like a circus, right? It's like a big drama thing surrounding a circus, if I remember correctly. Uh, yeah, circus owner and his performer girlfriend, and anyways, it's one of Ingmar Bergman's famous films, but not the upper tier of his films. Um, the problem with Ingmar Bergman, I find, is I've watched a few of his films now, and none of them have really impressed me. It was like they're they're kind of dry, you know what I mean? And I don't know, maybe I just need to explore more of Bergman's stuff. But yeah, so this one is, the guy's involved with the girl, and he has a wife and a kid that he left the girl for, and went with the circus, and then he's thinking about going back, and then the circus uh, owner gets involved with a financier for it. And anyways, it's interesting. I mean, the interaction between all the people is really good, but I don't know. I don't understand the point of it. So um, that's what Bergman seems to be, an intellectual director, but his intellectuality kind of goes over my head. Maybe I don't know. Maybe it's the language barrier because it's in Swedish or whatever. But anyways, all right. So next up after that is number 10 in the collection. It's a Walkabout. All right, and this is an early one as well. Um, and this film is directed by Nicolas Roeg. Now, Nicolas Roeg is a British director, an English director, but he directs. I guess he went to Australia and lived in Australia and directed Australian films, because this is an Australian film, but it's directed by a British director. And it's basically about um, a daughter and a son. The son is younger than the daughter. Remember, I haven't watched this since the 90s. It was another one that I watched when I got it from the library. Um, so you have a crazy father who brings his two kids out to the outback, out into the desert. All right, for a picnic, but he's really there to kill them. and he pulls a pistol on them and he's going to shoot them, but they ran and hid, and then he gave up on finding them and shoots himself in the head and dies. And now they're in the middle of the outback with no way of getting out of the outback. So it's an older daughter and the younger son, and then they just start walking through the fucking desert, right? And it looks like they're gonna die, but then an Aboriginal kid finds them and brings them, shows them how to get water from a hole and other things, and then they kind of survive with it, and then it goes on from there. So it's kind of like a children's story um, in the outback of Australia, right? So it's quite good. It's considered by many as, if not the greatest Australian film, one of the greatest. Right? It was during the time of the what they call it, the Australian Renaissance of film. You know, the because Australia's film industry kind of went into the toilet in the '60s, right? Um, it wasn't very popular. There wasn't much going on there, and then the government saw what was going on and decided to, reinvigorate the Australian film industry and started, giving grants and everything, and people would take advantage of those and start making films in Australia, right? So then you had a flowering of Australian film, and then it went worldwide, and you had it went on for a good, from the late '60s, early '70s into like the '90s. There was like a renaissance of filming. So Mad Max was one of the main catalysts of it, and its sequels, The Road Warrior, Mad Max, that kind of thing. And then it went Hollywood with Beyond Thunderdome. But the first two Mad Max films are really integrated into that. Um, Later on, you had the Crocodile Dundee films. So there was kind of like a worldwide love affair with Australian film back in the the '70s and the '80s, right? So this was one of them, one of them that spearheaded it, because this one came out. When did this one come out? 1971. So it was early on, right? All right. So next up after that is a French film called Port of Shadows, and it's number 245 in the collection. All right, and it's directed by Marcel Carné. Now, this film, what was this film again about? So it came out in 1938, and it seems like it's a love affair between an army deserter and a French woman. So I have not seen it, so I'm not sure exactly um, what it's about, but it looks like from the back that's what it's about. So, and Jacques Prévert wrote it. So you have Marcel Carné, which he's one of the big names in French cinema, and so is Prévert, sorry. He's directed as well as writing, so he wrote this. So the Criterion put it in probably for a reason. It's probably a pretty good film, so I'm gonna have to watch that one. All right, next up after that is another one of the older versions, the double-sided with the two discs inside. So here's Port of Shadows. It has the nice booklet in it, right? But it only has one disc, so the film's going to take up most of the disc. So probably, see, what happens sometimes is the Criterion Collection will decide on a film that they're going to restore and make really beautiful, all right, and then they'll go find a print of it to restore, and if they can find a print of it, then they'll restore it. But sometimes the print is the only thing that they have. There's not a lot of other footage about the film, like maybe a talk show version of it, or a trailer, or somebody talking about it in a different television show, or some sort of in-depth interview with the director, or things like that. If they can find all that stuff, then they'll put it all together and put it on it. And if there's enough of it, they'll make a second disc, right? So, but sometimes there's nothing there, right? So sometimes they just have something like that. That's usually why you only get one disc in some of the Criterions, is because there's just not a lot of peripheral stuff about the film that they can add on to it. But when they do find it, then they make these double ones, right? Where you have the nice booklet, the first disc for the film, and then the second disc. I don't know if you can see that. The first disc for the film, the nice booklet. These are my favorite Criterions, right? And the second disc of special features, right? So this one is In the Mood for Love. This is basically a Japanese film directed by Wong Kar-wai. So no, actually, Hong Kong film. It's a Hong Kong film. It's basically about two couples um, who are friends, and one of the couple's wife has an affair with the other couple's husband, and the other two find out about it, and then they start commiserating together about it, and then they start feeling attracted to each other as well. So it's kind of like this, not triangle, but this kind of square love thing going on, right? And the thing about Carway, if I pronounce Wong Carway, about his films is they're kind of slow paced and they're kind of romantic, but it's a visual experience with his films. He used like really strong coloring in his films, and the cinematography is like top notch in his films. So when you watch the film, uh, part of the reason why you're enjoying the film is because it's such a beautifully made film, right? And then the dialogue and the acting and the story is also integral to it, but it's that beauty of his films that stands out, right? Just some people have that, uh, and it adds an extra dimension to their films that make them really fun to watch, right? So if you haven't seen in the Mood for Love or any of Carway's films, pick up at least one of them. See what you think about it. All right. So next up is so In the Mood for Love was number 147. All right. Now up is the Beastie Boys collection. Um, this again is a double disc, but the reason why this one is a double disc because it's all their videos, right? Um, and it's number 100 in the collection. So they decided to do some hip hop, um, and I'll show you. So once I bought this, there's a poster in it. I'm not going to show you the poster, but it's basically the poster looks like that. It's a big poster of the back on one side of the poster and this on the front of the poster. So it's basically the same thing as on the DVD, right? So on the DVD case, right? So and then it has a listing of all the videos in this. What I did was I took it and I put it in a plastic bag to protect it because if you notice, it's starting to warp and dry, right? So I mean, even this guy had that I collected. I got 30 of his films, but he probably had twice as much as that. He probably had probably over 100 Criterions, but like I have almost 500 Criterions in my collection with the purchase of these. Um, so a lot of them I've already had, so I didn't buy. But anyway, uh, so what I did was I put this in plastic to protect it because it was getting warped and everything, right? So and I put all the. It's hard to find these double thick DVD cases. They're hard to find. So if you if you get these Criterion Collection films in the double ones, what I do is I put them in a plastic bag as well to protect it, so that it doesn't crack or break or whatever, and it adds an extra layer of protection for the actual DVD case because you can't find the friggin' DVD cases anywhere. You got to go cannibalize other movies to find a DVD case, um, and there's not a lot of DVD cases that are double-sided, double thick like these ones, right? So, and usually when you do find one, the film is an important film. And you don't want to you don't want to toss the film in order to just use the DVD case, right? So it's better just to protect the cases themselves. All right, so basically this is how many videos? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, like 15 to 20 uh, videos of all the Beastie Boys songs from, Intergalactic, Shake Your Rump, Sabotage, 3 MCs and 1 DJ, Rick's Theme, a bunch of different videos for the Beastie Boys if you're a fan of New York rap. All right, so we'll put this booklet back in. All right, so that's number 100 video collection, Beastie Boys video anthology, they call it. All right, and next up after that is The Spirit of the Beehive. Now, this one is directed by Victor Eris. Victor Eris. All right, and this is in 1973. And this is basically about Franco. What do I remember about this film? basically taking place during, so in Spain, so it's in Spanish, it's Spain. Um, there was a civil war in Spain back in the 40s, right? If I remember correctly, it turned of the 40s into the 50s, and Franco took over, and he was like a communist or a fascist, right? And he took over the country basically. And then what happened with cinema is that it became very restrictive, right? Like there were censors that would stop people from making films, and so a lot of the filmmakers, at least the clever ones, would make films that criticized, the state, the government of Spain at the time, um, but they would do it not directly. They would do it indirectly, like with symbolism and that kind of thing. So this is a perfect example of that. The Spirit of the Beehive. Basically, this is about a girl, right? What was her name? Child's haunted inner life and one of the most visually arresting films ever made. But basically, it's about a little girl who um, and her older sister, and their father is a beekeeper, a beehive keeper, and the beehive you can think of as Franco's government. Everything's run really strictly, everything's efficient or whatever. But there is no imagination, there is no art kind of thing. It's like a automaton kind of like bees do, right? So um, and she and her older sister go see there's a traveling film uh, company that puts up Frankenstein's, the original 1930s Frankenstein, and they watch it. And there's a part in the film where Frankenstein's playing with the little girl, and then he kills the little girl. So and then the villagers hunt Frankenstein down, the monster of Frankenstein's monster, and kill him, right? So the little girl asks his older sister, "Why did the little girl have to die? Why did Frankenstein kill the little girl? And Frankenstein seemed like a nice person. Why did they have to kill him?" And then his sister told her that it's all fake or whatever. That if you really want to talk to Frankenstein, you can talk to Frankenstein or whatever, right? And anyway, so that gets juxtaposed on the little girl. She goes out and she ends up finding a soldier of the freedom side of the Civil War who fought against Franco, and he's injured. So she brings him a coat and brings him some food and things like that and hides him. But then he eventually ends up being found and killed, right? So basically, he's kind of like Frankenstein in the film, right? And it's like a condemnation of the Franco government, right? Like the monster's misunderstood or whatever. Now, the girl doesn't die in the film, so it doesn't directly transpose from the Frankenstein film, but basically, when you watch this film, if you have no understanding or no knowledge of you know uh, domestic politics in the 40s and 50s of the Franco government and the Civil War, then this film might be a bit boring, right? Because you're just okay, this happens, okay, it's interesting, okay, it's all right. Um, Visually, it's really nice, all right. So, but if you understand what Eris, if that's how you pronounce his last name, I apologize if I'm pronouncing it incorrectly. Victor Eris was doing. He was criticizing the Franco government through his film, but more symbolically than directly, right? So it would pass the censor's eye, right? So if you looked at it and you have the idea and you know the history behind Spain at the time, and then you watch the film, you kind of do clues, right? They click in your head, right? And it makes the film much more interesting. So maybe read up. I mean, if you want, nobody forces anybody to do anything correctly. But if you have an interest in history, pick up some stuff on Spain's history, especially during that period, and then watch this film. You'll enjoy it much more, I think. Now this is in one of those paper cases, right? These paper box sets. So I need to, and it has, see, the difference between those older ones and this one is there. You got a really thin booklet, not much going on in it. It looks more like a visual appeal thing than it is actually, academia or an academic criticism of the film or whatever. And then you have the two discs, so that's cool. So you'll have the film, and then you have a bunch of special features, which is always fun. But I really like to read the booklets, so So let's say I'm going to watch this film again, I'll take the booklet out first and I'll read the booklet, and then I'll watch the film, kind of thing, right? Or if I'm really excited to watch the film, sometimes I'll just watch the film first and then I'll read the booklet afterwards. But what happens is, because this is all paper, you need to protect it. All right. So anything that's in paper will degrade over time unless you protect it in a plastic bag. So this will go in a plastic bag. All right. So next up after that is, the Polish director that I was talking about, Krzysztof Kieślowski, and this is the double life of Veronik. This is a nice box set, but see what happens when you don't protect your box sets. See, see how it's all getting damaged in the corners from pulling it on and pulling it off. Same thing on this side, right? So you really need to put a plastic protection bag around it so that when you're pulling it in and off the shelf, it's not really bumping the edges of the corners of the paper, and this paper is going to fall apart over time, right? But this is a nice box set of it. So you have the actual box, and then you have an actual booklet, right? A good booklet, not like in the spirit of the Beehive, right? Um, it's got writings on it. You know, when you get a booklet and at the beginning it has a table of contents, the booklet is going to be thick enough that you'll enjoy reading it, right? So it has the booklet, and then it has this paper fold away. That's kind of cool when you open it up and you see the face like that. That's kind of cool. And then you open it up, and then you got the two discs, right? Um, so it's a nice DVD edition of the film, but like I said, it needs to be protected or it's going to be damaged. It already is damaged, right? So even the top of the two, the booklet and the film case is damaged, right? So it just takes, a bag is like 2 cents. You can get 100 bags for $20. What, 5 cents? So like 5 cents, right? All right. So that's I did. So this film is really, really good. Okay. I'm not sure. This is the only film that I've watched from Krzyzowski. Maybe, I don't know, I'll have to go through his discography, but this is the one that stands out. And I'm not surprised Criterion put it in their collection. This film is about a Polish woman and a French woman. The Polish woman is like a singer. I can't remember. Was she an opera singer? Anyway, she was a singer, and they have a connection. These two people that have never met, and in fact, they have such a connection that they look exactly like each other. They're a doppelganger of each other, right? So um, she's in Poland and she's in France. So the girl from France goes to, I think it's Krakow, and goes on a vacation to Krakow, and gets on a tram or whatever, and is taking pictures, and takes pictures of Weronik is her name. So Veronik is the French woman, and Weronik, it starts with a W. May pronounce. Um, I don't I don't speak Polish, so but it starts with a W. It's like Weronik rather than Veronik, right? So anyway, so she comes to Poland, and the Polish girl sees her and goes, and notice that she's like a doppelganger of her, right? But they don't meet because the French girl gets on a tram or whatever, and leaves or whatever, and is taking pictures, and she happens to take a picture of Weronik, right, as well, the Polish girl, right? So then she goes back to France, and then she's telling her father and her boyfriend or whatever that she has this feeling that she's not alone. She has a feeling like she's connected to something, that something's guiding her. And what happens in Poland is the woman is singing, and then she has a heart attack and dies, right? So the Polish woman dies, and then her exact double at that time gives up singing because she's a singer as well, right? So there's this correlation between the two girls, and it's quite interesting. You're like really glued to the movie to see what Krasinski or Kozlowski is trying to tell you through this film. And I don't know if I get it, but it was interesting enough for me to, it grabs my attention, and I'm watching like intently to try to figure out like that mystery and how that connection is. And I don't think I ever came to a conclusion on that. Maybe you guys, if you've seen the film, you enlighten me or whatever, right? So, um, uh, but I did not read the booklet either, so maybe it'll be in the booklet. Maybe I should read the booklet. So anyway, so that's the Double Life of Veronik. All right, next up is, so the Double Life of Veronik is number 359. Did I tell you what the Spirit of the Beehive is? It's 351. Spirit of the Beehive and the Beastie Boys is number 100, right? All right, so Black Orpheus is the next one. Marcel Camus, Black Orpheus, number 48. This is basically, that story of Orpheus and Chris. What was the girl's name? It's like a retelling of the Greek myth, Orpheus and Eurydice or Eurydice. Eurydice. Anyways, it's a modernized version of. So uh, Camus took this, I think, from a play that was based on that old Greek tale, and then he made a film out of it, and the Criterion grabbed it and put it on. So it's basically Black Orpheus rather than, let's say, Greek Orpheus or whatever, right? So, but basically the story is a tragedy between female and male lover, and I won't ruin the story for you. I have not seen the film yet, so I can't really go into much more depth than that. But it is number 48 in the collection. It's the Black Orpheus. All right. So next up after that is Ingmar Bergman's Scenes from a Marriage, Criterion Collection number 229. This is not a movie. This is like a TV show, if I remember correctly. Um, and basically, I think it was 10 episodes, and it's basically about those two. They're married, and and Bergman, and see, it's another got a really nice thick booklet, and you got 3 discs. All right, it's basically, I think it was a 10 episode TV series or TV miniseries, and basically it's basically almost autobiographical about Bergman's uh, final divorce from his wife, and basically puts it on film. And this takes place over a decade, over like a 10-year period, of how this marriage disintegrates over time, right? And it's kind of like representative of what Bergman went through personally with his wife, right? So, uh, uh, if you like to watch that kind of thing, you should be quite interested in it. How long is it altogether? I wonder if it gives how many minutes it is. But I should really check that before. 169, 299 minutes, and 169 minutes. 3 disc set features disc 1, scene 1 to 3, disc 2, scenes 4 to 6, and disc 3. So there was a film afterwards. The film. All right. So that's Scenes from a Marriage, number 229. Number 229 in the collection. After that is Fishing with John. This is an interesting thing. This is another kind of like TV show. It isn't a film, right? And it's basically John. What was John's last name? Lurie. All right. So John Lurie takes famous people out and go fishing all over the world. I mean, they were in what? Costa Rica. They were in. Did they go to Jamaica? Where did they go? Um, Costa Rica. Tom Waits and him went to Jamaica. Um, in Thailand to search for the elusive giant squid. So basically, he goes all over the world and goes fishing with famous people like the director Jim Jarmusch, um, the actor Dennis Hopper, the and Willem Dafoe, and the musician Tom Waits, and Matt Dillon. They go to the Costa Rican jungle with Matt Dillon. Anyways, it's quite interesting. And then but basically, it isn't really about fishing. It's basically about two people on a boat having a conversation. And there's like, I don't know. I think there was eight episodes. I think there was 8 episodes altogether. Um, so quite interesting. All right, next up after that. So what number was that? Did I tell you? Number 42. All right. And after that is My Life as a Dog, which is Lasse Hallström's greatest film. All right. And basically, this is what? This is like a coming of age story about a child, a 12-year-old sent to live with his uncle in a country village when his mother falls ill. All right. So um, if you like coming of age stories, if you like stories involving kids rather than adults, and how they navigate the world, the greatest directors are the directors that can tap into their childhood, right? If they're going to make a film about children or kids or whatever, then they got to suspend their adult belief, like have a more in tune version of believing in magic and those kind of things, and everything is more wonderful, not wonderful as in great, but wonderful as in full of wonder, right? So Um, uh, the best directors can do that, and I think Hallström did that with this one, even though this one isn't as, it's not a, you can't really say it's a 100% pleasant film, let's put it that way. But if you can touch into your inner child, which never really leaves you, and you can bring forth that wonder, bring forth that way of thinking, then you can really grab a hold of a, an audience member, a person that's watching your film, and really just take their emotions and just do whatever you want with them, right? So, because children, especially when after you have children, once you become a parent, that the greatest fear of a parent, people have children because they want to continue on their line maybe, or they want to make a family because a family is really it's the best way to live. I mean, in my opinion, but in most people's opinion. So you have children because children, give you purpose in life, right? So, but and they bring you such joy, right? So, but the opposite side of that coin is if you lose them in some way, that's more devastating than almost anything that you can think of, right? So there's like that edge. So if a director can grab a hold of that inner child and bring it forth and show that wonder, he could make a wonderful film that will, you know, leave his audience with tears in their eyes or whatever. But he can also flip that coin and make it an awful. Do you understand what I mean? Like an awful thing, right? Um, like really, really rip the heart right out of your chest. So, but anyway, so Hallström did a good job in putting forth a film of My Life as a Dog. I don't know if his other films ever really live up to this film, and this is number 178 in uh in the collection. All right. So, and the last just single film that I got off the guy is number 36 in the collection, and this is The Wages of Fear by Henri-Georges Clouzot. All right, and this is a French film, um, but it takes place in South America, if I remember correctly. Where does it take place? Uh, yeah, just as South America. But basically, it's about four guys. I think two French guys, an Italian guy, and another guy. Right? Those are, they all have a friendship together, but basically, they're in South America, and an American oil. Uh, what do you call it? Where they're pumping oil out of the ground, whatever, an oil well catches fire, and the only way it'll burn forever until it burns all the oil out of the ground, right? So you need to put it out, all right? So how do you put it out? You do it with explosives. You blow the shit out of it, right? And then, the lack of oxygen kills the fire, right? So when you blow the shit out of a fire, it puts it out, right? So there's these four guys in the film, and they're hired. They're kind of desperate. They have, they're poor or whatever, and they bring two trucks and they drive it right into the fucking fire to blow the shit out of the fire to get rid of put the fire out, right? It's extremely dangerous, right? So the wages of fear, right? So uh, so they're basically putting their life on the line for some money to put out this fire, and so they bring two trucks full of not the most stablest of explosive at the time, which was nitroglycerin, all right, and drive. Anyways, I won't kill the film for you, but that's basically the premise of the film. Four guys down on their luck take a dangerous job to blow the shit out of a oil fire to put the fire out, right? And it's really dangerous work. So it's one of the older versions of it. It's got the two discs, right, and the booklet, right, and the two discs. So I really like these versions of it. The only thing is, after you start collecting them, you go, well, they could have put it in this one and put the two discs in something this size, so it wouldn't be so thick, and it would take up less shelf space. Because if you ever collected movies, shelf space is like one of the biggest issues that you will have eventually, right? So, all right, so those are all the individual films, and I bought one, two, three, four box sets from the gentleman as well. Um, and I would like to talk about these box sets. Okay, so first, okay, so I have Eric Romer's Six Moral Tales. So basically, it's really cool. This set, all right. Um, you have a booklet with the essays and everything of the 6 different films. But you also have the original book that Romer wrote. Eric Romer wrote a book first before he did the films. He actually wrote a book, 6 moral tales. They're like short stories, and you actually get the book with the so you can actually read the original stories that he bases, his own stories that he bases on his own films, right? And then you have all 6 of the films in the box set, right? Uh, so that's kind of cool. You can actually read the book as well as watch the films, right? So you have to be careful how you put these back in though. All right, so all right, good. All right, and then you have all 6 of the films. So basically, the films are number 343 to 348. All right, so those 6 numbers are taken care of with this, right? And then you have a booklet on the films, and then you have the original book that the 6 tales were based off of, right? So so you have the Bakery Girl of Monceau, My Night at Maud's, which is probably his most famous film. Suzanne's Career, La Collectionneuse, Claire's Knee, Love in the Afternoon, which is another famous film of his. So it's basically 6 morality tales, all in one box set, and Eric Romer's. So really good. But what they do also, I'm going to talk about this in a couple of minutes, is they also put a number on the box set. All right. So this number is 342. So 342 is the box itself. 343 to 348 are the 6 films. All right. All right. So that's the first box set I bought off of him. The second box set, which one should we do? We're going to do this one, number 185. All right. So this box set is also numbered, just like the Romer one. It's number 185, and then it has 4 films. All right. And this is The Adventures of Antoine Donnel. All right. 5 films by Francois Truffaut. All right. So Francois Truffaut first was put into the Criterion Collection for the film The 400 Blows. All right. It's number 5 or 6 or 7, something like that. I know it's here. So yeah, it's number 5. All right. So if you started collecting the Criterion Collection early, you would have picked up that film by now before this box set came out. Because then it came out. So you had the 400 Blows, you have Stolen Kisses, you have Bed and Board, and you have Love on the Run. All right. And then you have the 4 films. All right. Then you have a nice booklet. All right. Which is always cool. I really like the booklets. And then you have a fifth disc, which is Les Salades de l'Amour, which is the supplements to the other films. All right. So it's kind of like extras, right? So basically you have 5 discs in it, 4 movies and an extra disc, right? So that's cool. And they're numbered, but then you look at the numbers, they're numbered 186, 187, and 188. But the original one that was put out individually was number 5. So if you look, you see number 5, then you have the numbering sequential. So number 185 is the box. Number 186, 87, and 88 are the 3 films, and then they added the 400 Blows in it uh, as well, right? So so that's the second one. All right. So it's very similar to the first one that I showed you. Now we have the next one is John Cassavetes' 5 films. All right. So this is another box set. It is also numbered. It is number 250. All right. But this one is different than those in that on one side you have the numbering of the box, and then on the other side you have the actual films showing with their numbers on it, right? For those 2. Well, this one has the number on the box, but it does not have the number of the films because it's a box in a box. All right. So you slide the box off, and now you have the films. All right. So you have the films, and you have a booklet as well. So you have the 6 films, which are Shadows, Faces, A Woman Under the Influence, The Killing of a Chinese Bookie, Opening Night, and A Constant Forge. And then you have the booklet. All right. So this one is actually a box with a box over it. All right. But the box still has a number. It's number 250. All right. So that's John Cassavetes' 5-film box set. And now you have the Samurai trilogy, which is 3 samurai films by Hiroshi Inagaki. All right. And they are Samurai 1, Samurai 2, and Samurai 3. which are Musashi Miyamoto was the first one. Duel at Ichijoji Temple is the second one. The third one is Duel at Ganryu Island. All right. And they're numbered 14, 15, and 16 in the collection. All right. And the box itself, which is just a slide down box over it, does not have a number on it. All right. So there's no number for the box itself. All right. So let's talk about these box sets that Criterion puts out. All right. So first off, you need to protect them. All right. Anything with paper you need to protect. So I'm telling you again, you get a plastic bag and you protect it so it doesn't get damaged. Here's a perfect example. This gentleman probably was a big fan. I mean, why wouldn't he? He spent a good amount of money on Romer's films, so he has 6 films. But the sliding of the thing onto the shelf and then pulling it off and then putting it back and pulling it off and bang, there you go. See the bottom here? It's all damaged, right? You would have this in a plastic bag, it wouldn't be damaged. All right. So just another reminder. So basically, okay. So let's talk about the box sets. All right. This box set, if you're going to put it on the shelf, all right. So let's talk about collectors and then these box sets. So collectors collect the Criterion Collection because they know the films in the collection are of great quality, and usually they stand above other versions of those films if they have come out on DVD or Blu-ray elsewhere. Usually, a Criterion, you can pretty much count on that film is going to look really good, whether it's on DVD, Blu-ray, or 4K, right? So if you take a regular DVD of the film and then you take a Criterion, the Criterion is going to look much better because they restored it, right? They took the film that maybe that DVD was taken off of, that 35 millimeter print or whatever it was, and they took it and they cleaned it up and they digitized it and then they made it look really nice. All right. So usually, so that's one of the biggest things. The second thing that people collect the Criterion Collection for is because it's more of an academic kind of movie lovers version of the film where you have lots of extras that talk about the film, critics, essays in the booklets and everything. So it's a really, like, if you really enjoy film, you're like a film buff, and maybe you're, a historian or whatever. You get a lot of information with the Criterion Collection edition of a movie, right? So that's another one. A third one is it attracts collectors rather than film buffs, in that, like me, I'm of that type, that like a challenge of collecting something. So, I collect, let's say, the Everyman Library editions. There's like almost 500 of them right now, and I have maybe 150 of them or whatever. The ones that started coming out in 1992. So I like to collect those. Anything that has a numbering to it. Baseball cards is collect. You buy you buy baseball cards and you collect the set kind of thing. It's I don't know. It's something hobbyish that kind of is soothing when you have a challenge and then you go out and you try to fulfill that challenge. Um, so with the Criterion Collection, they're all numbered, so it's like a challenge to collect all of them, right? Go out and find them and collect them, right? So that's another reason why people collect the Criterions. So the problem is that Criterion, with their boxes, has manipulated the collector person of the box of it with the box sets. And here's how they've done it. And I don't know if they've realized it, but people are smart, right? So they did it in comic books. A perfect example is a comic book where uh, they'll put out a comic and then they'll give you 5 different versions of that comic. I mean, the front cover is different, right? You understand? So you'll collect the comic, but then the completist in you will want all the 5 different covers of that comic, even though the comic itself, when you read it, when you open up the cover page, the comic is basically the same, but the cover of it is different. You want to collect all 5 of it. So it increases the sales of that um, comic book, right? They would have sold only so much, but because they made 5 different versions of the cover, people are collecting 5 of them instead of 1 of them, right? So it's kind of an underhanded thing to do, um, because it's kind of OCD with some people when it comes to collecting. It's their some, you can even put it towards an addiction almost. So you're taking advantage of somebody by doing that. Sports cards do it as well. Originally you would collect a set of sports cars, there would be a number. Maybe there's 250 in the collection. You collect the 250, you'd be done. You go on to the next year and collect that one or whatever. And then what do? They put in uh, different border versions of the set. So let's say they'll have the base set of the 250 cards have a black border, and then the next level up, which are only 1/10 of the original ones, have a blue border, then maybe a silver border, then maybe a gold border, then maybe a red border, right? So basically, it's the exact same card, it just has a different border on it. And then you're starting to try to complete the original set with the black border, and then you want to complete the other ones, but it means that you're going to be buying thousands and thousands of baseball cards in order to complete any of those sets. It's a challenge if you want to take it, but for a completist or a person that collects baseball cards to complete a year's set from a certain company, it makes it impossible to do it, and they lost a lot of people because of doing those things, right? So, but it turned baseball cards into gambling almost, right? Anyway, so that's that manipulation, right? So they did it in comics. They did it in sports cards, uh, and then the Criterion Collection kind of mildly does it as well. All right, so originally you would get a box set that looks like this. All right, so inside the box set, there's no number on the box set, and inside are just basically the three discs. Right now, they have it Samurai 3, Samurai 2, Samurai 1. So this is a box set, right? But the numbering is there. Uh, so let's say before they put out this box set, they put out these three films individually, right? Well, these all have the numbers on them, right? So you don't really need to collect those three films if you bought this box set. If you hadn't bought those three films originally and you buy this set, it saves you money from trying to buy them individually. Now you have all three of them. The only problem is that people like to see the numbering on the shelf. So if you put this on the shelf, it's number 14, 15, and 16, 14, 15, and 16. So you have on your shelf 12, 13, then you'll put this 14, 15, 16, then you have 17 afterwards, but it doesn't have the numbering on it. So some people are OCD, right? And they'll say, well, I want the numbering on it. So what I do with a box set like this is I don't care about that. I'm putting it in plastic to protect it, right? So I just take my sticker printer and I make a sticker and then I put it on the front, 14 dash to 16. And then when you put it on the shelf, you have the numbering there. All right. So, but some people will just put it blank and it kind of looks weird. So sometimes they'll take the box out, get rid of the box, and then put this on. But now it's incomplete. Like when you're collecting, it's a Terry Gilliam film. There's a box set for the Gilliam film that is one number, and then they put out a box set of it. And they made it like 50. I think it's number 51 in the collection. They'll make it 51-1, 51.2, 51.3. There's a box set for it. Uh, Whatever that Gilliam film is, I can't. I'll put it down here. Anyway, so they did that with the box set of that. But if you had the original one, then maybe you'd collect the box set because it has like two more discs in it. There's like a lot more special features or whatever with it, right? But if you originally bought these without the disc, it's fine. You already have them in your collection. You don't need to collect this. And if you didn't have them in your collection yet, and you buy this, well, you'll save money because this will be less expensive uh, than the uh, than buying them individually, right? So this is a good way that Criterion can make a box set, right? Not numbering the box and putting in three actual discs, each with their own number, right? Um, so that if you buy them individually, you can have them individually, or if you bought this set, you don't have to collect them individually, right? Okay, so um, then they did this, all right. So then they did okay. Let's not do that one. Let's do this one first. All right. So this box set is number 342, and the films in it, there's six of them: 343, 344, 345, 346, 347, and 348. Now, when you put this on your shelf, all right, um, there's going to be a gap in your numbering because of it. With this one, uh, with this one, you can take the box off and just put the individual DVDs with the numbers on it if you really are that OCD, or you can do like me and just put a sticker. I would not put a sticker directly on the box itself because you're going to wreck the box, right? So but you put a plastic uh, bag over it, uh, close it so the air doesn't get to it, and then on the plastic bag you can put the numbering on it, right? If you need to, or like I said, you can just take the DVD cases out, then you'll have the numbering there, right? Right. But this one, if you take these out, then what do you do with the book, and what do you do with the novel or whatever, or the short story book, right? You want to keep them in, right? But then you have to make a choice. Are you going to put it on the shelf where this is facing out, or are you going to put it on the shelf with this is facing out, right? If you put it on the shelf with this is facing out, you're going to have a gap in your numbering. If you collected every one of the Criterion Collection, the numbering on your shelf is going to go 300, 301, 234, going up to 340, right? And then 341. And then you won't have a 342. And then you'll have 343, 344, 345. And that's going to frustrate you, right? All right. So, um, if you're OCD, like a lot of people are when they collect numberings of things, right? So 342 actually doesn't relate to a actual film. It only relates to the box that the films are in, right? So then if you put it this way for the 342, you're going to have a gap of 6 numbers in your collection, right? So what are you going to do? Well, what some people have done is taking all the films out, all right, and then they'll put the actual empty box on the shelf with the number, and then they'll put the films beside it individually, all right? So the box set isn't together anymore, right? You can do that, but then you better protect each one of these things. And if you're going to keep these ones inside this box, what will happen to this box over time when you're moving stuff around, as you do when you collect, is this box is going to bend, and it's going to be shaped like an hourglass, and the top corners of it are going to start peeling off, right? It's going to peel apart after time. So you're going to need to protect it. So then you put it in a plastic bag, but that still doesn't, it still is, you know, bendable or whatever, right? So then what some people figured out was what they'll do is they'll put in empty DVDs in the box to keep the box square, and then they'll protect it, and then they'll put it on. All right. So now they'll have the number, and then they'll have the individual films beside it. All right. But then these films aren't meant to be out on their own. So now you're going to have to protect those in plastic bags as well, right? And so now, and these, what do you do with these ones? What do you do with these 2 books? I guess you put them in there instead of a DVD case. I don't know. Anyways, these will get damaged a lot quicker because they're not plastic DVD case. They're all paper, right? So it makes a dilemma for the collector that Criterion shouldn't be making a dilemma for, right? They shouldn't number the box. All right, they should have it so that you can put the box this way with all the films in it with the numbering on it, right? So then all your numbers are still in order, right? But no, they number the box set. And the reason why they do that, it screws with you. It means I got to take all the films out of the box and flip the box set around. Or what they're hoping, I'm assuming anyways, if they're looking for revenue, is you'll buy the box for the number, and then you'll buy a second box for this. So you'll end up having one box full of all the films, and then beside it, you'll have the same box flipped this way. So now you have 2 copies of each film that you needn't have. So people say, I ain't going to buy fucking the second one, but some people do. They do buy that second one. It's like the variation cover of a comic book, right? And then they have the both of them there. So all the numbering is this number here, and then the numbering that comes after it, and then it goes on, right? So that's what some people have done. Perfect example is this one as well, right? This one has 185, and then the numbering on the films is 186, 187. So you have to take the films out and then turn this box set around and put the films beside it. But once you do that, the 400 Blows is number 5 in the collection. So these are all sequential, but the 400 Blows, which came out before this box set and was an individual film, is already in your collection if you already collected it. Now you have a second one. What do you do with that one if you're pulling these out? Do you take that out and you put it with the 5 of the other one and then get rid of the other one? I don't know. You end up having 2 of them, right? My personal thing that I would do is I would take these films out. I would flip the box around. I would put DVDs in to keep it square, and I would leave that film inside. That number 5 film, I would leave it inside and only show these 3 individually on the shelf. But what people do is they'll buy a box to show this, and then I'll buy a second box to show these. All right. But then this number 5 is out of place, right? So that's kind of irritating. All right. So then maybe they understood what was going on, and then so what they did was they never did go back to this one, or they may have. I'm not sure. They may have gone back to these ones where there is no number on the box. Um, but maybe this was just lucky for collectors. I don't know. But so this one is number 250 on it, right? But you can take it out and you still have all the films in the box. So you can put it like that, right? And you don't have to buy a second box set to have that number on it, right? So they solved the problem a bit that way by having it like you can do it like that. But then you'll need to get some DVDs to put inside, just empty DVD cases to put inside to keep this square so it doesn't warp over time or bend or turn into an hourglass shape, right? So so at least they did it with this one that you can actually take it apart to show all the numbering on your shelf if you wish. All right. Um, so there you go. But you're kind of forced to do it that way because you can't really buy a second one because it will be the same. You can't flip it around on this side and see all the individual films with their numbers on it because it's protected in a box, right? So you're kind of forced to pull it apart if you want all the numbering on your shelf to show, right? So, but basically, what they should do if they're going to put out a box set of films, all right, um, they should not number the box, and they should think about the collector in that, okay, if you're going to put out a box set of films that have already been put out in the collection, then you should have the box be a throwaway box. You know what I mean? Um, in that you just buy the collection. Let's say it's a bunch of Clouzot's films, right? Let's say there's 5 films, but this Clouzot film has already been in the collection and it's number 36. So if you're wanting to sell a bunch of back issue copies of films that are already in the collection, that's great, but don't number it, right? It forces somebody to buy that again when they already have this in their collection. They're going to have to buy that again to get that number, right? Don't number the box and then put inside the box films that you've already released, right? You're just making them buy it again in order just to get the box so that they have the number on their shelf, right? It's just, it's like, it's underhanded marketing, right? So, um, if you do put out a box like that, which is fine, if you want to save your customer some money, maybe you put out a Clouzot box set of 5 of his films that are already in the Criterion Collection. They'll still have the same numbering. They're in the box, and a person could buy that box, right? Um, and just toss the box away because it doesn't have a number on it, and just use the individual films and put them in order where they're supposed to go, right? You can do that, all right? But if you put out a box set that has, let's say there's 5 films in it, 4 of them have already been in the Criterion Collection, and one of them haven't, and the only way you can get that one film, which is numbered, is in the box set from that director or a box set that you put out, so that the person, in order to get, let's say, the number that's on the box itself, or a number on one of those films because it hasn't been issued individually, he has to buy the whole box set to get that film number, and that film, then yeah, you're cheating your customers again. It's underhanded. It's like you're forcing somebody to buy 5 films when they already have 4 of your films. They've already been your customer and bought 4 of those films, and so you take those 4 films, put it in a box set, number the box set, so now they don't have that number for that box, and then add one film inside that they don't have the film either, and number that film, right? That would be fine if you're going to do it that way. That's fine. Put out a box set with films that have already been put out in the Criterion Collection. They have the same numbers, but don't put out a film that hasn't been put out in the Criterion Collection. All right, and put it in a box set to force somebody to buy 4 films that they've already bought in order to get that one film. And then don't number the box. All right. And if you decide you're going to put out a box set, make sure that that film that is in that box set that hasn't been put out individually gets put out individually, like at least at the same time, or announce that it will be put out individually, so that a person that has 4 of the 5 films that are in the box set doesn't have to buy the box set in order to in order to get that film and that number, right? So So what you do is you think you're going to make more money because of it, but what happens is people aren't stupid, right? They realize what you're doing, and then you'll end up losing customers because of it. Like I used to spend, thousands of dollars a year on baseball card collecting, and then in the late '90s, early 2000s, they started doing that shit where they give you like four different versions of the base card, and then they'd put in these specialty cards that, if they're less available, that's fine. You can still go out and find them. But if you're making one of one unique cards, and you're the type of collector that likes to complete a set, so let's say you buy 2001 Tops, Series 1 and Series 2. You want to finish the series, but you also want to have every card that's in that collection. It's called a master set. You basically killed every master set builder in that collected your cards. They can't do it. They got to spend thousands of dollars on one set just to even come close to completing that set. And if there's one cards in it, a unique card that's in it that only one person will get eventually, that card you'll never get to add it to your collection, and so therefore your master set will always be incomplete. It basically killed the master set collector, right? It was supposed to improve, like get you even more, let's say, quote unquote, addicted to collecting. Let's say there's a set of base cards, and then they have, let's say, a gold uh, bordered version of it that is like for every 10 of the base cards you get one gold card. Well, that seems like a bit of fun to try to collect the gold version of the base set, right? But once you put four different types of specialty borders in it, and then you make them, let's say, one in every 10 cards of the base set, one in every 100, one in every 1,000, one in every 10,000, and just one unique card. There's no way you can collect those, right? You would have to buy every one of them, every card that they produced, right? You'd have to buy every box that was ever produced by that in order to find those one of one border cards, right? So basically killed anybody who wanted to build a master set of any collection. What happened was they either left the industry or left the hobby and went on and started collecting something else, or they just collected used stuff that was in the past. Let's say instead of collecting 20 2024's Topps base set series 1 or whatever, they would go on eBay or elsewhere and start, let's say, collecting the 1962 Topps set, right? And all of its variations, right? So then they'll just collect those instead and build that set because they can still build it, right? And they just forego all the new stuff, right? Anyway, so that doesn't help the actual manufacturer, Topps or Upper Deck or any of those guys, because they're in business, and they make money when you buy the new cards. Once the new cards have been sold, they don't make any money off them anymore, right? So you going back and collecting historical cards used from other collectors makes absolute no money for actually the card producing companies. And as you saw, what happened was there was a big bubble in the '90s, and then that bubble crashed because of this BS. And now you have like one or two companies making baseball cards instead of like six or whatever, right? So anyway, so I digress. So if the Criterion Collection kind of does that on purpose, what they do is they push people away from buying it because there's something that's called purchase, is it dissidence, purchase dissidence, or buyer's remorse is another way of putting it, where you go out and you buy something. A marketer knows, all right, maybe a businessman doesn't, but if they had a marketing team, the marketer would know that if a person leaves your store or leaves a purchase with the purchase that they bought, and they're happy with that purchase, in fact, they're joyous with that purchase, they will continue to buy from you when they want more of that. All right. So if they're happy with it. So when you go out and buy a car, all right, and let's say you go out and buy a Volkswagen vehicle, and the vehicle that you bought that year, um, let's say the engine was screwed on that. They didn't pick up on something, and they had to do a lot of recalls. And so for the history, because you're going to be using that car for like 5, 6, 7 years, right? Um, and you're always getting callbacks and having to fix the vehicle, the next car you buy is not going to be a Volkswagen. You're going to fuck that. I'm going to buy something else, right? All right. But then if you bought that Volkswagen and that was like the best car that you ever drove, it's awesome for its price and everything. The next car you're going to buy is going to be a Volkswagen, right? So marketers know that. So they want to avoid what's called buyer's remorse. So when you put out a box set that's like this, all right, and you number that, but let's say all of those films have been put out. I'm not saying in this box set that is true, but let's say all these films have been put out already individually, and now you put a box set out and you number the box set, forcing the person that already has all these films collected in their collection already, um, when they're collecting and they realize that the only way that they're going to get number 185 in their collection is to buy films that they've already purchased previously, you're creating what is called buyer's remorse. They have to buy it to get the 185, but after they buy it, they're not happy in buying it because they just spent $75 to buy this one. I already have that film and that film and that film. Or if you put out a box set that isn't numbered, but in this box set, you have a film that hasn't been released yet in the Criterion Collection, and the only way that you can get that film is to buy this box set, yet all the other films were released individually before, and people will have those films, but you're forcing them to buy all the films again just to get that one film that they don't have. And the only way that they will get it is in this box set. You're creating buyer's remorse again. The person will buy it, they get that film, but then they have four other films that they already have, creating buyer's remorse. What happens with the person that continues to get buyer's remorse for they just won't buy from you anymore. All right, they will move on to something else, and then you'll have other companies going into your market because they realize what you're doing and they're seeing people leave and they're going, hey, we could make some money off doing that. So then you'll have things like Arrow or Blue Underground or other companies going out and putting out shit that is like yours, but they're not screwing over their clients. But they may be using the same underhanded marketing ploys, but then they'll end up losing customers for that as well. So it's not a benefit. You think that you're going to sell, you will sell more boxes for this, but your future sales have just been compromised because you created buyer's remorse in a person that has bought this box set. All right. So if you do put out a box set doesn't have a number on it. If you're putting out movies that have been released already in the Criterion Collection and you're putting them in a box set, make sure all of those films in that box set have been released individually. All right. So that a person does not have to buy this box set to either get that number that's on the box itself, but doesn't involve any film, or to get any one of these films inside that have not been released individually. If you're going to put a box set where some of the films in it have been released individually, make sure that all the films eventually in this box set gets released individually so that you don't have to force people to buy movies that they've already owned again in order to get films that they don't own. All right. Um, you're just shooting yourself in the foot. All right. So numbering a box set, bad idea. Putting films that haven't been released individually into a box set and not releasing them individually with films that are already in this set that have been released individually, bad idea. All right. If you're going to put out a box set of films that have been released individually, have all of them released individually. It gives the person a choice that they can, hey, I can get this box set. It's really nice, and then just replace the old films that I have individually because it's nicer this box set. There's an incentive to get it, right? But the incentive shouldn't be, those fuckers, they put three films that I already have, but these two films I don't have, and the only way I can get them is to buy this box set. Then I got to buy three films I already bought, right? It's irritating, right? So you're creating buyer's remorse. Right? So if you do put out a box set, make sure it's not numbered. And if it's not numbered, make sure the films in it have not been released already. Or if they have been, if you put any ones that haven't been with ones that have been, make sure the ones that haven't been released get a release individually so that the person that already has three of these five films doesn't have to buy this box set to get the other two. You can buy them individually when they come out individually. All right. Just a little caveat for Criterion or whatever, right? All right. So those are the four box sets that I purchased from the guy, and So that's basically all the Criterions, right? Yeah, it is. All right. So I'll stop that there. I'll do another video of the Polish director. What's his name again? Krasinski, Kriz, Krasowski. God, I really need to know how Kieślowski, because he had I bought like a good 10 films off of him that aren't Criterion Collection films off of him. I'll do another video on that. Maybe I'll combine those ones with all the other uh, DVDs and Blu-rays that I've bought in the meantime as well. But I also have records and books that I have to go through as well. All right. Okay. So, but we'll stop that for now here. So those are the Criterions that I bought recently. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please leave me a thumbs up. Think about subscribing. I would appreciate it. But like I said, no pressure. Every video I always say no pressure. Um, uh, but if you like the videos, subscribe, and I would appreciate it. All right. So you have a great day, and I will talk to you in my next video. And bye for now.